Well, good morning, everybody. Our first map today looks at the Storm Prediction Center's latest update on the severe weather risk we have for this afternoon and this evening. We have a moderate risk over parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And we're going to have to keep a close eye a little bit farther to the north of this when we get here into parts of Tennessee, northern Arkansas, the Boot Hill, Missouri, into this part of Kentucky and Illinois. This area and through here will kind of make a case for why I think there might be the risk for rotating storms into this area near the triple point of this low early today. Now, yesterday, as these storms kind of went through parts of, watch it again here, going through parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, even into southern Illinois, you're looking at infrared satellite temperatures. And we saw some very large storm systems that blew up here. And some of these produced some pretty strong straight line winds and also some very large hail. And along this particular area this morning, we're continuing to watch those storms. And so we're looking at some live lightning data from this morning on where the storms currently exist. So again, we're going to watch this corridor right into this part later on today and then right down the Mississippi Valley into tonight. I think that's where we're going to see the greatest risk of these severe storms. And certainly that agrees with the Storm Prediction Center. So our all hazards weather map right now is starting to get quite busy coming out of Texas toward the Mid-South and Ohio Valley. And even north of it, we have winter weather advisories. We'll talk about the snow in a second, and a winter storm watch in this part of lower Michigan. But the flood advisories, the flood warnings, the flood watches that are out through this whole corridor are going to be adding to some of the very heavy rain we've seen as of late. We do have red flag warnings on the back side of this coming out of New Mexico and Texas, and there's still a severe thunderstorm watch out this morning for this part of Texas. So looking at the last 6 or 7 hours here of precipitation, we can see the frontal boundary on which these storms are stretching. And even across this area, just in the last few hours here, we've added quite a bit more rainfall to this map. What you're looking at here is the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. So not only did this system, which we talked about a lot earlier this week, cause all of the problems from California into the Four Corner states, including very heavy precipitation in Arizona, but last night, severe weather in through this area, plus the heavy rain. Look at this right in through here. Some places picking up 5 to 6 inches of rain out of this. This whole area is going to continue to see a stationary boundary sitting on it today and just an abundant amount of moisture getting pumped into this region. But we will finally watch a low curl up on that stationary boundary. You can see it right here by tonight. And this, again, is where we're going to keep an eye right here, southern Illinois, parts of Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and then to the south of it, that's the area that I'm most concerned about for the severe weather. Storm Prediction Center, let's just go look through their graphics really quickly here. This is their moderate risk for today. This is their outlook on the possibility of having tornadic storms. So you can see that they've got a pretty large area here that they've covered with the risk of these storms rotating and producing tornadoes. The wind threat is quite high as well along the Mississippi River, and there's your hail threat map. Now, the reason why I'm concerned, and my colleagues Matt Reardon and Andrew Pritchard, they were really discussing this, they're way better severe weather forecasters than I am, is we were looking at the triple point of this system, and what we notice is that the storm relative helicity is going to get really high right into this area. Now, remember, we looked at this several weeks ago for those of you that watch all the videos about trying to understand how these storms can take on rotation. So we see that tonight, really this evening, those values are very high right in this area. And they're high north of this always in the cold sector, but it's this area that we're going to watch right in through here. So just want you to be aware of that. Just be on the lookout if you're down in this area. On the other side of this, there's a lot of rain coming. This is the risk of having excessive rainfall, flash flood guidance from the storm prediction, from NOAA, stretching from Arkansas all the way here to parts of Kentucky and Indiana. So very heavy rainfall coming to this region. And on the northern side of this, we could be talking about snow. So there's actually a couple systems to watch. The first one, possibly putting down some snow coming out of eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, into this part of Michigan, then into Ontario and Quebec, a little bit into the interior of New England. Then we have another system we're watching coming out of this, right in through this area later on this weekend. So with that as a setup, let's get into some of the model forecasts. Let's pick this up at 7 o'clock this morning with the high-res NAM and just play this forward throughout the day today. So again, we're going to watch the whole of the lower Mississippi Valley for flooding initially and then the severe storms later, right in through there. So this is about 8 or 9 o'clock that we expect the main frontal boundary to cross the river. What we notice to the north of it is this is going to start off as a lot of rain, adding more rain to an area that's already been receiving a lot of rain. And then the trickiest part of this forecast, watch the blues emerge here. This is late tonight into tomorrow morning. How quickly does that change over to snow? Does it actually, get all the way down to Peoria? That's a big question mark. But could we see the snows in this area? Yes. We will not be able to forecast how much. It's going to be one of the most challenging forecasts on snowfall totals because of the ground temperature, the speed at which we convert over from rain to snow, and then what are the liquid to snow ratios in a system like this. This is one of the difficult things about March forecasting. But that system curls up into Lake Huron, into Ontario, and while that's happening, watch right here on the southern edge of this high pressure cell, snow spreading from Montana and Wyoming back out here into parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. And while all of this is going on, we're just going to turn our attention back to the west for the next system to kind of roll out. And to see that, we're going to go over to our multi-model analysis, GFS on the left, European on the right. So here's the heavy rain corridor we were talking about. As we play this through what we just saw with the high-res NAM, this is the severe storm threat tonight as it crosses the river, and then the snow, on the northern side. Again, the GFS is farther east than the European on where that snow is going to be. And again, we can't even look at these maps and try to assess how much snow is going to fall. But pretty good agreement on the timing and pace at which this is going to be getting into Ontario and Quebec and New England. And so we see that pull through. And we go right back into the next setup for Monday. Little shortwave sneaks out. You saw it in the previous run into the Central Plains and comes over Iowa, Illinois. See it right in through there? That's going to be Sunday, getting into early Monday. The lingering front from the first system is what's initiating the storms over the southeast here. Not right now looking at these being severe, but still isolated storms and locally heavy rainfall. We need as much of this moisture to get into the Carolinas as possible. North Carolina, Virginia has been going over drier, so I want to see this. And I put the month-to-date stats in today's report, so go have a look at that. Then what we're watching, as I said, is another system sliding down the west coast. And this one, again, another snowmaker for parts of Northern California, the Sierra Nevada, and it will likely initiate another large central U.S. storm system about a week from now. So you can see that coming out here. If you watched my long-range video last night, this was a pretty consistent feature in the models. Now, what we're looking for in this pattern, let me just play this for you, is we're looking for changes, first of all, probably happening over the Aleutian Islands or Alaska. And I noticed in today's latest long-range outlook from the medium-range outlook, this one goes out 15 days, that at the end of the time period, we start to see troughing happening here over Alaska and also over like the Canadian Maritimes. In the meantime, troughs of low pressure sit here and they push against this ridge that's over the Caribbean. And so that's what's setting up the very active pattern that's given us these big systems at about once every 5 to 6 days coming across the country. But a lot of us are asking, when is this cold air going to move out? When are we going to really pull warm air, not just over the southeast, but clear back up into the central United States? When are we going to break down the cold pattern in the west? The signal might be right here. Watch this again. This is April 3rd, 4th, 5th. See the troughing coming into Alaska? That's what I'm going to be watching for. If we can get it cold in Alaska, that will finally start to relieve this colder pattern that much of the country's been experiencing. So, frost potential over the next 7 days. And now let's go look at the model forecast for temperature pattern. We do see the models anchoring the colder conditions as they have been in the west, in the Canadian Prairie, coming into Montana and North Dakota. The warmest conditions tend to stay over the southeast. And there's going to be waves of warmth that try to make their way north, but overall we see through the first week of April quite cold air anchored in the central part of North America. It is after this that we start to see signals of the pattern breaking a bit, but that's not until mid-April. So we've been talking all week about another 20 days of seeing this pattern. Well, that's currently what the latest model forecasts are suggesting. I was a bit surprised that the new European weeklies didn't show more mild air in this area. We'll wait later today to get the newest data from the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, on their week 3, week 4 forecast. They'll release this later on this afternoon. But just coming back to it, there's a lot of concern over tight windows here in the eastern Corn Belt, the Mid-South, from eastern Texas all across the southeast. We really need to see the moisture hitting this area. We need to see it hitting this area. Those are two areas, of course, that are still in drought, which we discussed about in the report today, but also in last night's in-depth video. Better news, I think, for the West Coast, finally slowing down a little bit, but this could be cold enough to be more snow here in the northern plains. That's going to be my biggest concern going forward with how rapidly that snow melts that's covering the northern plains and upper Midwest and Canadian Prairie. Last couple things today. I just want to point out again, we have a discussion about where this La Nina currently sits. The La Nina's exit. That's what we talked about, and how quickly we could see El Nino return. Some of the new statistical model analysis suggest, again, highest probability June, July, August of having El Nino versus ENSO neutral. We'll need to see if the atmospheric circulation behaves in an El Nino-like fashion during that time, which means I'll be watching for West Coast ridging and Bermuda High, the Bermuda High being very strong. That's what I'll be watching for this summer. And finally, I just want to bring you up to speed on South America again. Very heavy rainfall. Some of these storms put down up to 4 inches of rain in Argentina. And remember, this was the area that was in drought. So you could look at these last 3 days and see 3 separate events that produced hail, straight line wind damage, and then rainfall that ranged between 1 and 4 inches in Argentina. This is just the latest graphic. Still more wet weather here. The drier conditions you see in Brazil right now are not a major concern yet, but if we continue to see this, it's something we're going to have to watch. Long-range models aren't suggesting it, but I just want you to be aware of that right now. So we'll wrap it up there, and I'll thank you for your attention. Have a good weekend. Thanks.